Hi, my name is Latanja Smith, and my report is on John Singleton's Boys in the Hood, Trials and Tribulations of a Black Male. I have enjoyed reading this film, the film reviews, analysis, and watching John Singleton's Boys in the Hood. The whole Boys in the Hood craze or phenomenon surrounding the film captivated me in such a unique way. Over 20 years ago, Boys in the Hood still is one of the most talked about African American films. When you reminisce about great African American films, one cannot go without mentioning this dynamic film. No matter the class, gender, or race, Boys in the Hood open up the dialogue to a variety of social issues within the African American culture, particularly the males. Why do we find this film so intriguing? My film analysis will explore the trials and tribulations of three main characters: Trey Styles, played by Cuba Gooding; Ricky Morris, played by Morris Chestnut; and Doughboy, played by Ice Cube. The 1991 film portrayed social issues and experiences of African American people. As I said before, particularly and specifically the males. This film highlighted racism, racial indifferences, black on black crime, and the structural breakdown of black families, which worked against these three black males. The film opens up with the tagline, "Increase the peace." Then it gives us a statistical warning. 1 out of every 21 black American males will be murdered in their lifetime, and most will die at the hands of another black male. After the opening sequence, writer and author Kenneth Chan, he's the author of The Construction of the Black Male Identity in Black Action Films in the 90s. He described a more sophisticated, symbolic articulation of the physical horror and the violence it surrounds when the camera zooms in on the stop sign, and then later the police yellow tape. Then the bullet hole picture of Ronald Reagan with a black kid giving it the finger. According to Kenneth Chan, he believes black on black violence is the internalization of racial hatred that the black man sees, directed to his blackness, and the rechanneling of hatred toward members of his own race, as evidenced by in the film when a black officer tells Furious, which is played by Lawrence Fishburne as Trey Styles' father, should have shot the black intruder so there'll be one less nigger out on the street. Or when Trey and Ricky encounter this same black officer as teens. This movie took place in the 1980s of Los Angeles. Boys in the Hood tells the story of Trey Styles, an impressionable 10-year-old who has behavior issues and sent to live with his father in South Central LA. Trey's mother, played by Angela Bassett, felt he needed discipline and male guidance. However, his new place of residence is where violence is a fact of life. Police helicopters with searchlights, they serve as prison guards, guns everywhere, and a child can walk to the corner store and not make it back home alive. Every day, these three males have to face violence if they don't make it out the hood. According to Kenneth Chan, one must examine its impact of filmic representations and expressions of black male identity. The young black man's rite of passage through the space of ghetto constitutes a major and formative part of his identity. Crime and street violence are a part of his world, and the way he comes to terms with it frequently determines the path he will eventually take. Chan goes further to express the surest way to prevent entrapment with the vicious cycles of crime and violence is to detach him from the environment completely. And that argument is really evidenced by how Trey survived. He actually survived the hood and attended Morehouse College at the end of the film, when we find out about that at the end of the film. Trey Styles, he's introduced to the audience as an intelligent, troublesome young boy, often sent to the office because of his behavior issues. His defiant behavior prompted his mother to send him to live with his father. And then as the movie progresses, every scene is presented with race or racial indifferences, which are life lessons for Trey. Of course, we have the scene with him and his father when they were victimized by a burglar in Trey's first night there at his father's home. And then you have this African-American police that finally shows up an hour or so later and is very disrespectful to him and his father. Then, of course, we have that same officer who Trey and Ricky encounters later on as teens. And it's as if that African-American police officer has rechanneled hatred for his own members of his race because of his racial hatred directed to his blackness. So we see that both references of racism and racial indifferences is evident throughout this movie. Also, according to Sherry Pinder, which is the author of Black on Black Urban Youth Films and the Multicultural Audience, she says that directing films about growing up in the hood, quote unquote, in the hood, are black males, and these films have become epic genre that is generated out of socially constructed young black male masculinity in an urban environment, while making use of both deconstructive and realist proficiencies within a framework of racisms. With these hood, quote unquote, films analyze the many ways in which race functions to subsume other sets of social relations, class in America. Consequently, another social issue that is addressed in this film was the structural breakdown of black families. This film exposed an escalated succession of black family regarding structural elements. These elements are introduced to the audience by a character in the film named Ricky. And Ricky was a pretty gifted athlete who seems to be headed for college, playing football on a scholarship. But however, it was troubling and interesting all at the same time to witness how this film unfolded this particular storyline between Ricky Doughboy and their mother, who is played by Tyra Farrell. One thing we noticed that she favored the youngest, which was Ricky. She favored him more over than Doughboy because he was a high school star athlete with huge potentials of becoming a superstar on the collegiate level and possibly making it to the pros. Therefore, Ricky, I felt, was her ticket out of the ghetto with hopes of moving up the economic system, in which led the mother really to commodify her sons. Ricky, the quote-unquote financial investment, and then you have, Doughboy, the quote-unquote waste. And after further along in the film, you would see Ricky and Doughboy having I call it a mama loves you more than me fight. And then you see Trey, he's witnessed the confrontation between the two. And so he pulls Ricky away from all that drama, and they start, they walk off, blow off some steam, and they're walking to the store. Well, later on, as they depart ways, Ricky is so intense and heavily scratching off a lottery ticket, he did not see the guys that he really had a run-in with earlier in the film when they were cruising along Crenshaw, that those gang members were driving by, and as a result, they shot Ricky with 2 fatal shots, one in the chest, one in the leg, resulting in his death. So as the film concludes, you'll also see that Doughboy was killed 2 weeks later after his brother's funeral. So now both deaths exemplify how toxic the dissolution of a black family could be related to fatherless households, gangs, and black-on-black crime or violence. According to Chain, once again, the images of black-on-black violence are thematized in all of the films. In all of the films, support the argument of auto deconstruction. Destruction within the black community. It isolates two possible reasons for this inflicted violence within a racial group. It first posits the self-inflicted violence due in part to the result of scramble for the limited resources available to the suffering masses. So, which explains our next character, which is Doughboy, the brother of Ricky and one of Trey's best friends. Doughboy, he wasn't a bad kid at all. You know, he had some issues, but he wasn't bad. He wasn't bad at all. He was just into drugs and booze, and then later got into some trouble. He pretty much stayed away from gangs. They both did, who operated the neighborhood more or less. But somehow, there's a small possibility that words can find a way to lead to an insult, and an insult to prove my manhood with guns, resulting in another black male's death eventually. In this particular scene, Ricky's been shot, and his lifeless body is brought home by Doughboy and Trey, of course, and they decide to retaliate against the gang members that killed him. However, Trey struggled with the idea so much so he when he was riding the car with Doughboy and the crew, he asked Doughboy to stop the car and let him out. Nevertheless, Doughboy and his crew found the killers at the burger joint, and they opened fire, killing the gang who killed his brother. And once again, the audience witnessed another black on black crime once again. This movie, Boyz n the Hood, delivered an emotional depth and realism opposed to dramatic playoffs, which drew the audience attention easily. We felt the racism and racial indifferences Trey experienced with the black officer as a child and as a teenager. We were there in the home of Ricky to witness the structural breakdown of the black family regarding to favoring one son over another. And we were there as innocent bystanders watching Doughboy pulling the trigger to avenge his brother's death. We were there. I echo the words of film critic Aaron Winter and totally agree. Boyz n the Hood is an important film that should be seen as a document of a particular set of problems as represented in popular culture. And what we see today, it's represented in what we see today, and it should serve as a conservative thesis on the African American condition and race relations in post-civil rights America. This concludes my analysis of Boyz n the Hood. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and you all have a good day.